If you haven't watched the first video, please go back and do that. It's called Truly Fundamental Executive Functions. And I'm not going to review the things that were in that video. I'm just going to try to build from there. And a lot of people after watching the first video were like, well, but what do I do? So this is my attempt to answer that question. However, I'm definitely better at answering that question in specific situations. I can give you more specific thoughts. So please comment, send me an email. First off, if you have questions about the video, like I said, put them in the comments, send me an email. And the way that we did empathize and understand when I did this workshop is we played bingo. And I recommend that you do your own version of this. So basically what we have is a whole bunch of scenarios, things like a sixth grader sees a group playing Foursquare and wants to join them. A 9-year-old insists on making their own lunch and does that each morning with different degrees of success. And some of them are much longer than that. And your job is to use the executive function list, which is also linked in the comments, to talk about which executive functions are at play. And the sort of punchline I'll just tell you now is pretty much all of them are at play all the time. What it really is practice thinking about how they apply in each situation. And ideally, you're not just naming the executive function, but you're describing how it is at play and whether it's cueing or directing a perception, a feeling, a thought, or an action, or more than one of those. Do that in these various situations and realize that all of these things seem to be going on all the time. You really get a clearer lens to look at situations that come up in the classroom or in your own life. Just reviewing my core assumptions from the video. Basically, if they could, they would. If someone is able to do a thing that they're asked to do, they'll do it. Saying someone is completely capable of doing it, it's just that they can't pay attention. Well, they can't do it. And they need to not be told, you could do this, except for you can't do that. Because these executive functions are not under their control, right? Bottom line is believing that if they could do the thing, they would do the thing. And if they're not doing it, we should assume they can't, or they have higher emotional stakes in doing something else. That does not lead me astray. That does not lead me wrong in the classroom or in working with a student one-on-one. The next thing is that everyone cares. They care. It's just not safe to care, or it's humiliating, but really everyone cares about all the things. I'm more effective as an instructor if I go in believing everyone cares, and if they could do the thing, they would be doing it. Also, and very importantly, the students need to understand executive functions themselves, so we can plan with them how to scaffold their own executive function development. They especially need to understand attention, knowing that it's basically a dopamine shortage, so you're going to be seeking stimulation to build that up. Shifting, everybody takes a different amount of time to go from one routine with executive functions to a new one, a routine or a completely novel set of behaviors. Task initiation is really tough. Students think they're just procrastinating, but they may well not be able to start. They may not know how to start. They may be overwhelmed. There are lots of reasons the task initiation is tough. And memory is very personal. Different people need different amounts of time between applications of the thing you're trying to remember and different amounts of repetition. That's just talking about rote memory. If you can apply a narrative to the thing you're trying to remember, for many people, that's much, much more powerful. Any kind of association is stronger than just plain repetition for most people. And inhibition. So this is a big one because we demand that students stop doing things that they cannot stop doing. They do not have the executive function of inhibition developed to the level that keeps them from acting on that impulse. And if you put a kid in the position of, you must not do the thing and they can't help doing it, then they're just trapped. And they will develop coping skills. They will do things to save face, but they're not going to make much progress. On the other hand, if they understand that you understand that they can't inhibit the behavior and you're expecting them to make progress toward, not staying with that behavior, noticing, oh, I'm doing the thing that I'm not supposed to do, and either amending it or just stopping it. And the progress you expect to see is that happens sooner and sooner and sooner. Most kids can do that. They can live up to that. And giving them a thing that they can do is way better than just insisting that they do something that they can't. There's so many questions about ADHD, and attention and inhibition are, closely related because a lack of inhibition results in impulsivity, And ADHD is highly reliant on stimulation-seeking behaviors in order to self-regulate. You see kids with ADHD blurting out lies, and people are mad that they lied. But again, it's about impulse control. They may not be able to stop that from happening until after it's happened. And if you haven't discussed it before, like, it's okay. We know that it happens before you have a chance to stop it. They were caught in something and they're in red alert mode. And so they just blurt out the thing. No, I'm doing the thing I'm supposed to be doing. I'm not doing what you just saw me do. You have to realize that that's lizard brain, right? They're in red alert mode and they are saying what they think will get them out of the situation very quickly. And they don't have time to stop themselves. They don't have the inhibition that they need in order to stop themselves. They're not able to inhibit that lie or that call out or whatever it is. And so what you're expecting from them is them to catch themselves sooner and sooner and say, whoops, sorry, that's not true. Yes, I did this. And if you can really treat them like they've actually done a good thing, then it's not that they did better. They've actually done the best thing they can possibly do. And if they do it sooner the next time, that's also the best thing they can possibly do. So that really actually needs to be celebrated. And that gives them much more chance to improve in general, because there's not a bunch of mental bandwidth taken up with shame and fear of being in trouble. Again, when there's impulsive behavior, we need to understand these are executive functions. They're on a pretty fixed trajectory. So they really do have zero control over that potentially. It's really hard to admit in middle school that you can't control your own behavior, right? It's infantilizing and embarrassing. So we kind of need to name this for them. Each time they're punished and scolded, it's hard on the relationship. It makes them feel less safe, less understood. It makes the teacher go slowly insane. We just have to give them a way to make progress and demonstrate that they're improving. And what they can do is react to the impulsive behavior after it happens. And honestly, if this is well supported and you're like, good job, kids get to the point where they say half of the thing and then go, sorry, and they catch themselves. And then eventually they get to the place where they like open their mouth to say the thing and they don't even do that. They might stand up and then sit back down. Progress is really what we're looking for. So I have a little script. So someone's doing a lot of impulsive things and the teacher might say one or more of these things. Hey, I see you're a little all over the place and distracted. That happens to me when I'm not feeling great about what I'm doing. Do you need help with anything right now? Tell me what's the first thing you need to do when you get back to work. Okay, and then what? Nice. So it sounds like you know what you need to do. I bet you can even catch yourself if you're getting off task before I have to come over here next time, maybe? I don't know, we'll see. Not that I mind visiting, it's good to see you. So, and then talking about ADHD and stimulation seeking. So the thing to understand if you don't have ADHD, a dopamine shortage is very uncomfortable. The need for stimulation is a fundamental need like hunger or fatigue. Like I need sleep, I need food, I need stimulation, or I can't really focus on anything else until I get that stimulation. At our baseline with ADHD, we're running a deficit of dopamine. And so we seek it out through interaction, movement, media, all kinds of things. And a lot of adults with ADHD develop a menu for productivity. Like, what do I need in order to, say, get an hour of work done on my computer at home? Well, I can tell you, I need to be outside on the back porch, even if it's really cold, and covered up in blankets with a big glass of water, my water bottle, and usually classical music. I have 3 or 4 different playlists. And if I do those things, I'm actually able to be productive for a really long time. And it's very important to understand, and for the kids to understand too, if you're using some kind of stimulation in order to focus, that stimulus should be apparent as you start, but then as you get to work, the stimulus disappears from your consciousness. So you're not actually hearing the music. You're not actually thinking about the fidget that's in your hand. The only way you can tell is that you're strangely able to work and work and work. And the other thing that I've realized recently is if I'm like focused on something in the workplace, focused on something on this computer, in this very desk, I will be relatively focused. And then when I stop doing the thing and I need to start the next thing, all of the seductive things, checking Facebook, checking email, all of the seductive things on my computer. Oh, I need to order that thing. Anything that'll give me more dopamine than the work that I'm doing is extremely seductive. However, if I have this in my hand or music on, when I finish the task, the music fades back into my consciousness and it soothes that part of me that's desperate for stimulation. And I'm able to go quickly to the next thing, the next actual task on my actual to-do list without being pulled into those other things. So it actually helps fill in the blanks between things, which it's embarrassing to say, but the kids often agree with me that those moments in between things are really irritating. It's like we can get bored on a dime. That doesn't seem good, but it's better to know that it's true and work with it than to pretend it's not true. So the stimulus that's helping you focus, the thing that's on your stimulus menu for productivity, all of that should become subconscious when you're actually working. So if you're thinking about the lyrics, if you're dancing around, unless the dancing around is not something you're really conscious of. So teachers can collaborate with kids to find the in-class menu for optimal stimulation. Maybe there's a fidget, maybe music in their earbuds, maybe a wiggle chair, maybe partner work if you can do it. That's often one of the most stimulating things. It's complicated. There's novel interactions all the time. Raises your stimulation level much higher. Again, just like the other things, is it working? Am I actually producing work? So that's the last thing that's really important, both for parents and for teachers. Let students prove what works. If you don't have ADHD, the idea that you could have multiple stimuli in your environment and that help you focus on one thing seems insane, but I promise you it's true. The challenge is young kids want the stimulation to be what they love, and that may or may not actually help them be productive. So they need to use all the stimuli that they say will help, and then you need to go follow up with them about what worked and what didn't work. Did they actually produce work? Is the quality of it high enough? So other part with ADHD, hopefully everyone knows this. It's from Dr. Russell Barkley, but in case you don't, people with ADHD and people around them need to know that we cannot be depended upon to remember anything, regardless of how important that thing is, even to us. And this is because our brain is basically very polar. We have two basic states that we live in. Either we're super focused on trying to find enough stimulation, and that's when people think we're distractible. Basically, we're really trying to fulfill that need of having enough stimuli so that we can self-regulate and feel okay. Or we're feeling okay because we're hyper-focused on one thing. And in either of those states, there's no room for, oh, I have to remember to bring my binder to whatever class, or, oh, I have to remember to get my suit for the wedding I am the groom in today, right? Like, it's crazy. There's just no place for things like that to be. We have to give ourselves an external reminder that will be unavoidable at the time that we want to do the thing. And in my world, that means iPhone alarms. And in the kids' world, it could mean iPad alarms. Sometimes I say, should we email a parent? And that's unfortunately not as dependable as I would like it to be. I always have to tell parents. So they want to do this thing at 5:30. Ideally, you would tell them at about 5:20 so they have time to shift. You'd say, hey, in 10 minutes, you're going to do the thing. And then at 5:30, you go, hey, okay, do the thing. And then hopefully you will back away and they will do the thing or not do the thing. And then we need to troubleshoot. So teachers can have this conversation in the classroom. If there's not a reminder to do the thing in the normal place, for instance, at our school, it would be on Google Classroom. And if it's not in Google Classroom, specifically on the to-do list, which is the one place where most kids will look, then we need to ask them, so how are you going to give yourself an unavoidable reminder at the time you want to do the thing? Are you going to give yourself a Post-it note? How's that unavoidable, right? We just have to really work through with them. Like, if you don't give yourself those things in that way, you're deciding not to do the thing. And if you take that into life, you will do pretty well. It seems to be working for me so far. It's really important that teachers understand about shifting. The requirements for being in the hall and staying safe are very, very different than the requirements for being in the classroom and learning or getting work done. So that's a big executive shift from the one mode to the other mode. And then there are shifts between different modes inside class as well. If you go from taking a test to giving a speech or pair work, individual work, like, you're shifting all the time. And That's an executive function. So kids cannot really control over a long period of time. They may be able to improve a little bit, but they can't really control their ability to shift and the speed at which they can do it in the moment when they're in front of you and you're like, why aren't you doing this? To try to make sure the most important things are heard by the most kids, try not to say them at the very, very beginning of class. Okay, listen up, blah, 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 blah. Like, most important thing, a bunch of kids didn't hear it because they're not there yet. So like that thing I said about, talk to your kid at 5:20 to say that in 10 minutes you're going to do that thing you wanted to do at 5:30. Same thing in class whenever possible. Like, I'm going to make important announcements in 30 seconds or 1 minute. 5 minutes even is good if you can swing it. I guess that's it for shifting. Those are the things that I wanted to talk about. So task initiation requires emotional regulation, right? Especially if the task is particularly challenging to you, or you've had experiences not being able to get started before or not doing it well. You really also have to have strong perception management. So they have to sift through all of the sensory input around them and ignore everything except for the things related to the task at hand, which can be a real challenge. So the classic is sentence starters, but I think that shouldn't be a knee-jerk reaction. There may be other things they need to work through to get to starting a task. And memory, I could talk about for quite a long time, but I talk about it in the video. So watch the other video if you haven't. Hopefully you have, because this is pretty dry. Each of these topics could be covered in hours and hours. So I'm just giving you some nuggets here. And if you have specific situations, please let me know. In assignments at my school, we use Google Classroom, like I said. And one of the assumptions is if you don't finish your classwork, it becomes homework. And yet kids also know that there's a thing called to do in Google Classroom, and the classwork that's become homework doesn't show on that. I guess in some cases it does, but they have to know to look for it. We need to figure out a way to make that more salient, to make that an unavoidable reminder at the time they're going to do the task. So some sort of a banner, maybe in homework descriptions. And don't forget, if you didn't finish your classwork, or just maybe make it a homework assignment, finish this classwork. I feel many people are doing this. And similar problem, if you are missing assignments, they don't show up on the to-do list anymore. You have to check missing particularly. And then even when kids do check the missing tab, they often see things that they recognize. And the fact that they recognize them makes them assume, oh, I know what that is, so I must have done it. And it's a massive executive challenge for a lot of kids to look at a sheet of instructions with all kinds of details, all kinds of nuance descriptions, and pull out of that exactly what am I supposed to do and what order am I supposed to do it in, and which of these things are important and which of these things are suggestions. So one of the things I model for students is showing them what language tells me, oh, this is a thing to do. This is an item to produce, an actual thing to create. And I turn the paragraph into a bullet list, and we generally try to make it about a half sheet. You may still need to refer to the longer list, but it makes the overwhelmingness of the instructions greatly reduced. There's a 11th grade history teacher at one of my favorite schools who gives complicated critical thinking writing assignments, and it's always a half sheet. And I had a super dyslexic student who it was his favorite class because he understood exactly what to do and did a great job. And this teacher was differentiating between teaching writing skills and assessing understanding of history. He needs the writing to communicate. He doesn't need it to be pretty. He doesn't need it to be formatted in some particular way. Half a page supplemental info elsewhere. I guess it speaks for itself. Time blindness is a very common ADHD symptom, and it can manifest in various ways, large and small. I think sort of an age-appropriate thing is most students in middle school can't seem to fathom an assignment that actually takes many, many, many hours. And so we give them weeks of class time to work on a complicated project. And we've given them all the instructions, and they need to know I'm ignoring everything but doing instruction 1, and then I'm doing instruction 2. And most of us have suffered a lot in order to get to the point where we're like, well, who cares if I finish it early? I'm just going to work on whatever there is to work on right now. But for kids, something that's due next Thursday, that's forever away. I can't possibly need to work on that now on Tuesday, 9 days before it's due. So thanks for the free time. It just doesn't compute that you're actually giving me this much time so I can do this much time's worth of quality work. And I honestly think the only way to get all the kids working on a daily basis on something long-term like that, especially post-pandemic, is to make the schedule super granular. Today we're working on this. If you finish this, do this. And if you finish that, do this. So that nobody has nothing to do on any given day, because each day has something assigned to it to do, not just work on the big thing. We see too much flailing when we do that. So this is a example of a note I wrote to a certain 7th grader. So when I write something like this with this many words in it to someone with ADHD, I know that they may read the first few words and then start skipping. And then they'll get to, oh, look, this thing is numbered, and maybe read that. If they don't really read that, hopefully they'll see the link. And that's an important resource for them to see. And then maybe they go, whatever. And hopefully they see the italics. Like, right, when you change something visually, there's more chance of them being drawn to it. And I realized that my theory was that they were stuck, and that they were stuck on doing analysis or commentary on the evidence they had of something. So that became huge and colorful. I wanted to give them a very systematic way to connect a thesis to commentary. And so I wrote, you can find specific words in your thesis that relate to specific words in your quote from the book. If your thesis is something about anger being destructive, then the quote might have somebody yelling at it, someone hating them. And so we're connecting the word anger in the thesis to the word yelling in the quote. And we're connecting the idea of it being destructive in the thesis to the idea of them being hated in the quote. And you can write a very specific sentence about that. And that's your commentary. Hopefully over time it gets smoother. Anyway, I felt like the chances of my kid actually reading through the very large part and maybe nothing else would be okay. But I got to keep them interested if I want them to look at this many words, or even a portion of this many words. Last thing I'll talk about, we often teach skills separately, and then to test efficiently, we integrate them. We integrate those skills on the test. So maybe 3 or 4 different things that were mostly done separately are integrated into one question or one activity. And that's actually testing at a very high level of mastery for expecting a student to recognize what those things are when they're presented in a novel way, and to be able to apply the skills correctly and in an integrated way again. So potentially what happens then is the student maybe gets a 0, maybe they don't know what to do and they don't do it. And we don't know that they've learned all the skills separately that they did. Ideally, in my perfect world, maybe 90% of the tasks on an assessment should be the level of complexity at which the things were taught. They shouldn't be integrated skills, except that last 10% when we really are trying to judge mastery, actual mastery. Are they able to flexibly use new concepts alongside old concepts in novel situations? Having that be, how high of an A you get seems reasonable to me. I'm sure other people have different ideas.